Think about that.
Oh, I don't think you're going to see U.S. ground troops in Ukraine. I do think you're going to see more forward-based troops in NATO countries near Ukraine and near Russia, so the Baltic states, Poland, etc. I think what will be interesting to watch, these sanctions were a taste of the future. They're credible. They're not weak, but they're also not strong. And so they're blocking sanctions against military bank, VEB, some oligarchs. But there's a lot more powder that is dry. There's full blocking sanctions possible for some of the real systemic banks, VTB Bank, Rosneft Bank, Gazprom Bank, and the biggest bank of all, Sberbank. That would really hit the economy. That's been held back for the moment. Some people think Biden should be hitting him harder, faster, but the administration has decided to hold that back. And then, of course, the sanctions on semiconductors, anything licensed on technology from the United States, that's huge cost to a lot of American companies if these go forward. So some of this is being held back to see what Putin does next.
Do you think he is at all surprised? I mean, I hate questions that try to get into his head as if we're mind readers, but I wonder if you believe he has been impressed or surprised by either unity between the U.S., UK, EU, or Germany's reversal on Nord Stream 2, anything that is forcing him to recalculate in a way?
That would be trying to get into his head. The one thing we can see by getting into his head is it's pretty strange right now. So 22 years in power. He's about to turn 70. He's been very calculating with his military action in Georgia, 2008. Crimea, 2014. The sanctions that time were not very harsh, didn't hurt him at all, didn't shape his... I think he is surprised that the Biden administration has put allies together as well as it has. I think after seeing us in Afghanistan, he may be a little bit surprised that one has moved such tough sanctions forward and perhaps moving troops forward into neighboring states. But that being said, I don't think we've seen anything that would yet tell him this is unbearable, that I'm going to pull myself back from my historic dream of bringing Ukraine back into the Russian embrace. He really dreams of ancien Rus. He sees himself as a great leader on par with the czars. And that doesn't happen unless he brings together great Russia again. And that requires, first and foremost, Ukraine.
Yeah, first and foremost, Ukraine, Fred. But I mean, also in the meantime, he's in Belarus. Didn't really have to do anything, got basically no pushback in that process as well. So he does seem to be expanding that footprint officially or unofficially in the region. Key question for me is, what does all of this mean for Europe, which does have this exposure, much more exposure than U.S. To Russia, particularly from an economic standpoint?
Thanks, Morgan, for that question. I think you really have to watch energy. 40% reliant on energy, Germany to Russia. That's just not smart. If you look at the world, any decent strategic thinker would say, why would that happen? And that's happened in part because they've shut down nuclear. So you have to take a look at that. It's a good thing that the chancellor today said Nord Stream wouldn't go forward. But Nord Stream isn't new energy. Nord Stream is existing energy. What happens if the Russians shut up energy to Europe? And then you have to think about this whole new world where we were dreaming during the George H.W. Bush time of a Europe whole and free. The wall came down. Perhaps Russia would even find its rightful and peaceful place in Europe. Well, now we're back in a spheres of influence world. And most of history has been that, by the way. And Russia is recreating a sphere of influence around itself. And I think what you're going to see with Europe and the United States and NATO is we're going to have to start deciding what is our security perimeter. How are we going to arm it? What equipment are we going to put there? What kind of resources? But to a certain extent, it's back to the future. We thought we were moving on to issues like climate, issues like pandemics, but we still have the old issues of security with authoritarians.
Everything you've said, Fred, about sort of turning back the clock, trying to undo historic humiliation, could be argued about China-Taiwan. What happens to that conversation?
Well, I think President Xi is watching this incredibly closely. How this gets handled could either be a playbook for authoritarians going forward, or it could be a deterrent to authoritarians going forward. Chinese have been careful not to recognize Crimea as part of Russia. The foreign minister, I was just in Munich at the Munich Security Conference, the foreign minister was beamed in, and he said that one should abide by the UN Charter, which would mean that Putin shouldn't go in and change Ukraine's border by force. On the other hand, they like to see the U.S. brought down a few notches. A couple of weeks ago, you saw that extraordinary joint statement between President Xi and President Putin, 5,300 words. Never since World War II have we seen the two leading authoritarians of their time make common cause the way President Xi and Putin do right now. It's opportunistic. It's aimed against the U.S. But I think if Putin gets away with this, I think President Xi would have to think that he's got a better shot at Taiwan.